me, saying, if your sons take heed to their way, to walk before me in truth with all their heart, with all their soul, he said, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. Some of David's last words to his son Solomon, who is about to return here. You heard anything like this before? Was that like something you might have heard? It did for me, okay? So I'll turn to Joshua chapter 1, verses 7 to 9. And this was God's instruction to Joshua as he was to take over for Moses. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. In both cases, Solomon and Joshua were told to be strong. Okay? What's it mean?
Be strong in whatever you do, I guess.
All right, be strong. And how are we to be strong? What is the strength? Am I going to pump iron? Is that strong? Sure we are.
No,
One at a time and speak up.
hopefully, church leaders will speak from knowledge. And strength is, I don't know, some people have got natural leadership abilities. We have teachers in classes here, like Tom, I use you for an example, that are really good teachers. They have that strength, they have that voice. Some of that leadership abilities is God-given. Some of it is not.
Okay.
Moses wanted Joshua to be strong for the people because they were about to go to war.
Certainly the context here is for leaders, right? But is this example of these instructions only for leaders? And are the only words that you should pass on to your son who's king or who's going to rule the country?
Deuteronomy 6, the instruction was for the entire nation. It's the same instruction, Deuteronomy 6, but it was for the whole.
Okay? You see, to me, the example in today's lesson is about me and my sons. It can be about you and your daughter. It doesn't have to apply to sons. When we're told to be strong, I would say that's being strong in the faith. And how do we get there? Reading, study. Our two guys were told to meditate, study, and not to do what? Famous from Joshua. We always remember this. Don't turn to the right or left. Yeah. Right? To stay with it. And I think that's the biggest part of what I get out of this whole lesson. In 2 verses. And if I'm reading this right, and this is something that you can teach your son and your daughter, what do you have to do first? Oh, mercy. And was David the example? Sometimes he was a man after God's own heart. So we know that deep within, and we see David's repenting over and over in Psalms. But Patty, I think, hit the biggest thing. You can't teach anybody anything if you can't walk the walk yourself.
You have to live it.
Have to live it.
And then see a sermon, then hear a sermon, you need that, as someone say.
So that requires that we're gonna have to study.
In Philippians 2, verse 13, Paul tells, for it is God who works in you, that works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure. If we don't have the willing to do the work of God, we can never be strong in the faith.
So for my part, I'm married, and for my wife's part, we just happen to have boys. But if we're gonna pass this along, we have to know it ourselves. Can you do that on 4 hours a week?
What did you say?
Can we secure enough knowledge and we be smart enough that we capture the Bible in 4 hours a week?
No.
Probably not. And that's a hard thing, you know, when you're raising children and all the stuff that you're going through, and you've got a job because you want to keep that job to feed the family, it's hard to set aside time, isn't it? Any of you that have been through it? It takes work on a parent's part. And your children, as they are old enough to receive this information, they are to carry it on with what they have learned. 4 hours a week enough for them? It's not for you. Why is it for them? And, you know, we always talk about children being sponges because they soak up everything. Are we cheating them when we don't take the time to make sure we're here at worship and Bible class, but also time at home? If they can suck it in, why are we not giving it to them to suck in? I was smiling. I may not be the best way to present it, but you understand what I'm getting at.
Sure.
They have the ability to handle this.
I agree 100% with you, but, you know, I've got a Bible in my bathroom, I've got one in my easy chair, I've got 1,000 Bibles right here. I try to teach my kids every day, just common knowledge. Sadly, I wasn't, when my kids were young, I wasn't going to church. And I've talked about that before here, and I'll forever regret that, but just the way it is. And you try to teach your children from your experience. And God's ways, sadly, I've seen in the church today that a lot of people want to keep part of that word. We can't do that. We got to keep it all. We got to keep it all. And if you mention that to someone, I know I'm kind of going off track there, and I'm up on the box. But they become angry with you. And but I'm going to go ahead and accept that anger. Because I don't, this is kind of paraphrasing here. I don't want to stand there before Jesus. And you know, we got a song that says, I knew I was astray, but you didn't say anything about when they're lost. I'd rather put up with that than to see somebody lost when you know that they're going in the wrong direction. Hypocrisy is one of the greatest enemies of our church today. Hypocrisy. Sorry.
I'll give a very short version of what Charlie said, is that we got to keep it all. That's quite a reduced version, but for those who are online, they couldn't hear. How big is the example? You don't know the folks, you never will, and that's okay. But they traveled a lot, and they neglected worship when they traveled. Would you be surprised if I told you that their kids are no longer faithful worshiping? Because the example they got was, well, when you're out of town, it's okay to miss worship. Right? So we have to be careful. Now, back in context, these were when people would take charge. When would you tell your kids this? When would you impress your kids with this?
Train up a child from the days of their youth, and they will not depart from it. So the earlier you start, the better it is.
give a 5-year-old dose of this to your child the first day they go to kindergarten?
On their level.
5-year-old dose, right? That's how I phrase it. A level that they can handle. But do you prepare them for stepping out in the world alone with some Bible knowledge and some encouragement that God's looking after them today? When they graduate from school? When they go off to college or their first job, or maybe it's the military? Right before they get married? When is a bad time to share this to prepare your young person?
Never.
Never. So while this in our lesson is a one-time thing, for those of us as Christians, it never ends, I don't think. Before you have a grandchild, some of you might be telling me that.
When we look at James 4:17, to know to do good and do it not is a sin. We know it is good to teach our children. We know it is good to be at worship service. We know it is good to help others. When we don't do it, what are we doing? Sinning, separating ourselves from God.
We need to do that in love, yes, because when you're in this auditorium, it may not just be what's called us. Some people call it us and the them. And we may have visitors that get injured to the point that we'll never get that chance again. They'll think, oh, they're running us down. They're getting ugly to us. We have to do that in love and very careful words.
Did you read my notes? Because the next qualifier I will add comes from 1 Corinthians 16, 13, 14. What Paul had to say. Watch. Stand fast in the faith. Be brave. Be strong. Let all that you do be done with love.
Strong is enduring. Yes, as you say that it's,
Strong in the faith.
yeah,
Strong in what's right and what's good.
strong in strong in patience.
And so, in part of this teaching that I'm doing with my kids, I may do in a Bible class. It's not about Rick. And whatever I've learned, I've been blessed to be given the knowledge and to be put in the right place to hear the right teachers and to have the opportunity to study God's Word. So as I'm sharing this with my children, it's not about me and what I have proven or what I have done or what I haven't done. Might be how I've been blessed and what you can look forward to, but it's sure not about me. Any more thoughts before we move on?
Rick, you mentioned pumping iron, lifting weights. When the Lord commands to be strong, here's your necessary inference from the Old Testament. When I tell you to be, say we are talking about your bodily strength, when I tell you to be strong, that is necessarily inferred that I'm telling you you need to lift or to exercise or to do something. You don't just be strong, you don't just get strong. So in the Deuteronomy 6 passage, when he says, when you sit, when you lie, when you rise, when you wake, everything that you do should be surrounded by study of the Lord's Word, there's an implication, a necessary inference. That means you're going to be a studier, a lover of God's Word. By day, by night, by morning, by evening, not 4 hours a week, like you said. There's an inference that strength comes through the love of God's Word and spending time in it. You don't become Arnold Schwarzenegger by going to the gym once a week. It implies that you do regular work, regular strength. So that's a necessary inference in being strong and be strong.
Any more comments? It's not about the teachers, it's about asking the right questions from you guys to speak up. There's some unfinished business. David's dying, he says, take care, show kindness to Barzillai. Jim, a couple weeks ago, I think, handled some of this. And how maybe it's wise to treat our former enemies as friends, to be forgiving and understanding. I know Joab, do not let his hair go down to the grave in peace. That's an interesting way to put it. Or Shimei, bring his hair gray down to the grave with blood. Is this a good example? Well, what a stupid question, right? Leviticus 19:18. You shall not take vengeance or bear any grudge against the children of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. What David just asked his son to do? Go ahead and kill these guys because they did me wrong. Did you ever lay that burden on your kids? Maybe not kill, but where, well, I don't like them, so you shouldn't like them. You ever do stuff like that?
Have you ever instructed your children or someone about the dangers of being around certain people and maybe what they represent and what they could do based on what you know about what they've done to you or to others?
Is that good or bad?
Is that what he's doing here? Is he giving an instruction to kill, or is he giving an instruction to avoid and mark and to know what these people can end up doing?
Gray hair go down to the grave with blood.
Is that?
We can talk in just a minute about how Solomon received it. Okay? How he responded. Got to be careful what we say, don't we? And what we think. And you can see signs in society today where parents gave their children responsibility and didn't give their children responsibility. This made me think of an old song that was in the 70s, sung by a guy, Clarence Carter. It was Patches. And his father died, and his father told him, take care of your mother and your family. It's not quite as eloquently worded as the song was. Is that fair to ask of your children?
Because it teaches us to do that.
That is saying Christ teaches us to do that, right? Didn't he chastise the Pharisees that weren't taking care of their parents? Pushing aside, oh, my money's got a better use.
He did it to John.
Pardon me?
He did it to John. I mean, he passed the responsibility of his mother on.
Great thought. So there are things we can expect that our children can do as we pass on information. At what level, that's a whole different story. Yeah, having a responsibility for your family is one of the things about the Eastern religions. If you get to know any of the Hindus, very good on
That was
family.
extended to be active in, like Tom was talking about in the Old Testament, if Jesus was responsible for his family when his father passed and was on from the cross. Jesus chose John, not one of his brothers, but he chose John to take care of his mom. But I'm going to take care of my kids today. I guess I will. Am I going to toe up? I just accept that. I want that. I hope that's okay with God.
This is not something that happens in one day. This is over a lifetime. This is building up and preparing for life. Okay, so we're going to have the third king of Israel. what he does is he goes out and he kills these two guys. Not by his hand. Oh, he has somebody else actually do the dirty work. But Joab and Shimei, they're gone. Right from the start. The way Solomon understood this is they were my adversaries, get rid of them. Paid the debt that I couldn't pay. Is that the guy you want to be the third king of Israel? What was God thinking? I can ask that question, but I also I'm not as smart as God. That's a big thing. I can't look into people's hearts as God can. But I do know this, and it's a little different to think about it, but in Matthew 19:8, Jesus said, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. Jesus is talking about divorce. It never was supposed to be. Nothing like that. One man, one wife, done, over, finished. Life together, as long as life is. And yet, he allowed them at the time of Moses to have divorce. Because he knew man. Did he approve of it? Was it right? Did he agree with it? No. Was he going to like everything that Solomon did? Not likely. But there were reasons that God selected Solomon to be the third king. Some of them I get, some of them are well over my head. But it goes back to wisdom that God has that we're sure doesn't.
But God knows even our heart, and he knows our heart. He knew that Solomon and David and Saul were people that loved him, especially David and Solomon, and wanted to serve him, but being humans, they made mistakes. And being humans, we're going to make mistakes with our children, with our brothers and sisters here, but hopefully each day was trying to be the best us.
Again, the very, very short version, we're human, we make mistakes. We all know that. Now, the same Nathan, the prophet, who convinced Bathsheba to talk to David about Solomon being king, also told this prophecy to David. 2 Samuel, chapter 7, verses 12 through 15. When your days are fulfilled and you rest with your fathers, I will set up your seed after you, who will come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commits iniquity, I will chastise him with the rod of men and with the blows of the sons of men. But my mercy shall not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, and removed from thee before you. Sound like God knew Solomon was going to mess up? It does to me. What did God say? He was going to stick with Solomon the whole way. And you remember why David couldn't build the temple? He was a man of war. And God was not going to have a man of war build his house.
Blood on his hands. Blood on his hands.
Blood on his hands. But Solomon's reign was one of the most peaceful, if not the most peaceful, during the time of the Israelite kings.
I wonder if he would be allowed to build the temple if he didn't kill Jeriah. You know, when he killed Jeriah, put him in there. The front of the war there.
I'm sorry.
Because David killed, Jeriah. David killed one of his soldiers, his lead soldiers there.
I got you. So he's asking, and this would be speculation for sure, was the last of the dirty deeds when he had Uriah the Hittite killed, so he could take his wife. Was that the last, the dirtiest blood on his hands for all that David did? Could be. David was a man of war, and part of what he had to do was to finish the job of taking all Israel. So,
What was the purpose of Joab being killed? Yeah.
you would think that it was because he killed Joab after, Joab killed Absalom after David had told him to take the line. We know, we studied the last couple of weeks of how bad David grieved over Absalom, even though Absalom was taking over the kingdom.
But do you think that that was a vengeful feeling? I mean, was it something that, like we talking about David said, you know, the blood was hair down to the grave and all this, you think it was out of vengeance, or was there more of a purpose to it?
I think you may be nitpicking. I still see it as vengeance because then Joab would actually go and become, would kill off some of the other leaders, but he also would become the leader of the army, or Adonijah, when he tried to usurp the authority of Solomon.
Well, I just want to make one more little comment. It would seem that in verse 32, when he says, or verse 31, he says, "Do as he has spoken, fall upon him or bury him, that you may remove from me and my father's house the blood which Joab shed without cause. The Lord shall return his blood to his own head." There was blood on the hands of David and the house of David. He couldn't hold the throne. And just by reading through that passage a little bit, it seemed that the purpose could be, why Joab had to die was to shift it seems to shift the blood that was on David's hands from the house of David to Joab's head, is what it says. I mean, it's interesting to see the dialogue there where he kind of gives why he wants Joab to die, and therefore Solomon's throne can be clean and peace and all that in the future. Seemed like, I don't know, that's something I saw.
I can see there being peace. I don't see how that removes David's blood. And it doesn't change the fact that he wanted Absalom to be alive, and Joab took care of that. Jim, you gonna follow?
Understand what Tom's saying here, the reason that David instructs Solomon to take care of Joab in this way is to ensure that he doesn't bring another uprising up against Solomon. I think that because he said to him, I think it's verse where he tells David to take vengeance in some places and be kind in other places. And Joab is one of those cases where he says, you take care of him, but be kind to his other who has been kind to him. And so he's in a way, he's protecting Saul by instructing him that you got to watch this kid.
The last of which we'll mention today is Adonijah. He had what I call a measly backdoor approach to stealing the kingdom from Solomon. We turn back to 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 50 through 52. Now Adonijah was afraid of Solomon, so he arose and went and took hold of the horns of the altar. And was told Solomon, saying, Indeed, Adonijah is afraid of King Solomon. For look, he has taken hold of the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear to me today, he will not put his servant to death with the sword. And Solomon said, He proves himself a worthy man, not one hair of him shall fall to the earth. If wickedness is found in him, he shall die. Now back to chapter 2, where Adonijah goes to Bathsheba. Then he said, you know that the kingdom was mine, and all Israel had set expectations on me that I should reign. However, the kingdom has been turned over and become my brother's, for it was his from the Lord. Now, if he understood that, if he meant that, saying that the kingdom was Solomon's from God, then why in chapter 2, verse 17 did he say this? Please speak to the king Solomon, for he will not refuse you. He may give me Abishag, the Shumanite, as a wife. Right in the last few minutes with God, remember that Abishag, she was a young maid that slept with David. Whether you call her concubine or not, I don't care. That's well past our time. She did not have sexual relations with David. That's what we're told. But most would have seen him as her as a concubine. And look back historically. What did Absalom do when he chased David out of Jerusalem? He took the concubines. What did the Arabs and the Persians do when one king stomped another? He took the harem, the women. So it was very clear what Adonijah was trying to do. He was trying to usurp Solomon's authority. He was trying to come in and he came back door. Even though he told Solomon he was on his side, even though he said the Lord gave the kingdom to Solomon, Adonijah is still trying to bring it down. We'll finish with 2 Kings 23 through 25. Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, saying, may the God do so to me, and more also, if Adonijah has not taken his word against his own life. Now therefore, as the Lord lives, he who confirmed me and set me on the throne of David my father, and who has established the house for me, as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death today. So King Solomon sent by the hand of Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, and he struck him down.
Looks like that old boy's been a little bit smarter. Or really smart. He should have went and strapped on his own gun and got ready because he knew. He had to know that that was coming. Because he was trying to take the throne back. That was a big trouble.
Given to him by God. Was that sarcastic? No, no. That's how I would read it, but I don't know that. But if he believed that, he should have stopped there. And he didn't, because Adonijah is. Thank you for your comments.